Hello. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm super excited to see such a great turnout. And we're also recording this because there were other students who couldn't make it but wanted to still be able to get the information. So for those of y'all that haven't met yet, I'm Professor Fuselier, and I am the faculty sponsor for the Student Wellness Organization. And so this week, the ABA is promoting mental health and wellness in the legal profession. And so we wanted to piggyback on that and use this as a week here at the law school, getting closer to final exam time when things like anxiety might be amping up a little bit, just saying. We thought it might be perfect timing to spend a week to focus on mind, body, and spirit. And so if you've seen some of our activities scheduled for this week, we've tried to hit on each different component that affects you as an overall healthy human being. So today we wanted to kick things off with a great panel discussion, and I'm super excited. All three of these individuals I have taught, so some more recent than others, but I'm super excited. So we have first Whitney Kelch-Green. She is a 2012 Baylor Law graduate. She's a partner at the Dallas firm of Carrington Coleman, where she practices exclusively family law, and she runs their family law section. She is the 2021 president for the Dallas Association of Young Lawyers and is also on the board of directors for SPCA of Texas. Then on the other end, we have Andy Jones. He's a 2013 Baylor Law graduate. He is board certified in civil practice advocacy by the National Board of Trial Advocates. Andy's practice is dedicated to exclusively representing victims of medical malpractice and catastrophic injuries. Andy is president-elect of the Dallas Association of Young Lawyers. I see a leadership theme here, Baylor Law grads going on to lead. He is also the proud father of two wonderfully chaotic toddlers, a boy and a girl. So in the middle, we have Kayla Dietrich. She's a current 2L here at Baylor Law, and she serves as the president of the Student Wellness Organization. Before law school, Kayla earned a BA in English, a BS in biology, a master's in health science, and a master's in public health. And she also attended medical school for 3 years, but gave into the Lord's plan and came to law school. And she plans to practice family law and estate planning after graduating from Baylor. So we have invited these three to come and talk to everybody today and provide some insight and helpful information for all of us in this room and everybody who watches the video eventually, and to kick off our Wellness Week. So we will start. Kayla has graciously agreed to pull on her science background for us and start off the discussion by having a brief overview of kind of what is depression, what is anxiety, and the impact that has on individuals. Now you can stand just anywhere.
Can we just roll?
Sure, we can all roll. Roll your chairs down.
And then that way we'll be on camera.
Just don't dislodge the wire.
That would be me.
I'm a personal injury lawyer, but I'm a fact witness, so I don't care.
Okay, can y'all hear me with this map? Okay, I feel super qualified to talk to y'all about this, not because I went to medical school, but I have generalized anxiety that if it acts up, it goes over into the depression world. So I found out my twin over here has the exact same thing. So woo, there you go. Okay, so depression is basically just a constant feeling of sadness or loss of interest in things, loss of interest in your normal everyday activities. Not, I have to study, I can't watch movies. It's more like, I don't want to watch movies anymore if that's what you like to do, or I don't like to go running anymore if that's what you like to do. It's totally different from our regular mood fluctuations that we have every day. It's ongoing, it's not passing, it doesn't last for an hour or 2 hours or a couple days and goes away. No, this is very persistent. To be diagnosed, doctors usually want you to have symptoms that last for more than 2 weeks. With anxiety, you get feelings of worry, tension, or fear, and not just when you're under pressure. So this isn't the regular, oh my gosh, I just got cold called by Bates, what do I say, kind of thing. It's kind of a feeling of incessant freak out for no reason. Or at least you can't figure out a reason why. These feelings happen for no reasons, and they even continue after stressful events. So what does this have to do with your brain? There's four main players called neurotransmitters. Anybody know what those are? If not, they're little chemical messenger people that run around in your brain and tell different parts of your brain what to do and how to react. So the big players are norepinephrine, that's like your fight or flight response. Serotonin, that's your happy response. Dopamine, that's your reward response. So it gives you feelings of pleasure, of happiness, and then GABA does the same thing. Anxiety and depression are both linked to low levels of all four. There's not a one size fits all. So in my case, I have very low serotonin levels. So it makes, when I'm not on my medication for anxiety, it makes me super sleepy. I have no motivation to do anything except to sleep. I worry constantly about everything. When I say everything, I mean everything, like weird stuff y'all probably don't even think about, like
They do think about it.
maybe so,
That's why
maybe
we're
you do, true. So yeah, crazy stuff, things like that. There's a lot of different types of anxiety. Usually, if you have anxiety, it can lead to depression, but you can also have depression that leads to anxiety. So they both go hand in hand.
Ask the question, I guess I better have the
Microphone, okay. So now that we kind of have a little bit of a baseline here, Andy and Whitney, wanted each of y'all to kind of provide a little bit of background. What is your experience with depression and anxiety? Is there a specific type that has affected you in your day-to-day life?
Hi, everybody. First of all, thank you for coming today. I think that this is such an important topic that needs to be destigmatized. As president of DAYL this year, Dallas Association of Young Lawyers, I really made it my mission to promote wellness, and we've put on 3 CLEs thus far, which we've had over 100 attendees at each one, just based on anxiety, depression, and then as well as addiction and substance abuse. And so the truth is that it is pervasive, not only in law school, but in our profession. And I remember when I was sitting in your seat that I heard TLAB come talk to us. I would hear the Texas Young Lawyers Association president come talk to us. I would hear faculty talk. And I felt like I was just being talked at and not to. I felt that, oh, that's not me. I'm so far away from it. And then I really had my first experience with depression and anxiety when I was a 3L in big trial. Not to scare anybody, but when I came to law school, I had already experienced the unexpected passing of my dad, who was my provider, and had to figure out how to support myself, had to figure out how to pay bills. And so coming to Baylor, I kind of always felt like an outsider, that I was constantly comparing myself to everyone, and I was always in survival mode, meaning that I would just get through one day and then figure out the next. But what that did is it provided a really great coping mechanism for me, which was, oh, okay, if I get called on in class, like, what's the worst that can happen? We're talking about a fake case, we're talking, I don't have real clients yet. And so it helped me get through the day, but ultimately what your professors and what the faculty are doing here is going to prepare you for real life. So if you're already having those feelings of depression or anxiety, I really encourage you to go across the street to a wellness center. As students, you guys can talk to counselors for free, you can talk to a nurse practitioner, and you can get medication if that's what you need. For me, I had to have a full-on breakdown on the side of the road, screaming, crying, telling my husband, once I've been in practice for 2 years, that I didn't think I wanted to practice law anymore. And he was an attorney, so he understood. He's like, yeah, it can be hard, but there's all these like great things about it. But what he didn't understand is I had a chemical imbalance, that I couldn't see the bright side. I couldn't see what would come after the storm. And it wasn't until I was consistently in counseling, it wasn't until I was on Prozac that I knew that life could be so much better. So I just really encourage you that, one, I'm sure many of you in this room either know somebody or are struggling with these feelings, and it's not hopeless. Getting help is not a sign of weakness. I was always a mental health advocate. I always said, oh, of course, mental health is just like if you have a broken arm. But when it came to myself, I couldn't get the help I needed until I hit rock bottom. And don't let that happen to you, because life can be so much better. You can be successful. You can be a partner at a huge prestigious firm, have a family, and be president of whatever bar association you want to, but you have to take care of yourself. And it's okay to be a little selfish. It's okay, because you have to get through today to make it to tomorrow to help everybody else.
So the panel's over. That's what you know. So to the question of how, the journey with anxiety and depression is that I've been blessed, I haven't had to face the loss of my father in my youth. I haven't had a whole lot of adversity, and I imagine that there's some of you out there that maybe feel the same way. And so I came to Baylor, and we're in the rescue profession, as Professor Wren says, and we're here to take on other people's burdens. And so I thought to myself, okay, well, I've got to take this stuff on and keep taking stuff on. And so for me, the challenge was figuring out, do I have a problem, or is something outside in the world really an issue? And later on, I'll draw my concern, worry, afraid graph, but that's not responsive to the question. And so in law school, you're sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, I am going to fail remedies. I'm totally going to fail remedies. And you're like, okay, well, that's anxiety and something going on out in the world. But then when I got out into the world, and I'm not saying this isn't the world, I should never do that. But when you get out in actual practice and you sit down in the middle of the file room and just want the files to close in on you, that's not the work anymore, something's wrong. And so for me, the struggle is figuring out, is this the work? Is this the external stimuli, or do I have a problem? And so eventually, a couple of other Baylor lawyers I know, we've gotten really close. We talked about, hey, we're feeling the same way. So what are you doing? Well, one of my friends said, I'm seeing a therapist. I'm like, all right, you know what? You got the A in practice score. I like you. I'm going to go see your therapist. And you know what? That was one of the greatest choices I've ever made. And that helped me figure out that I did have a problem, and it wasn't just the external stimuli. And so that's how my journey with anxiety has developed, is that it's winnowing through that, finding the help at the right time. And man, that pandemic has really really took a big hit for me. And I'm on medication for the first time in my life, not because of what's going on in my life, but doesn't change the fact that I've got all these great things in my life, and I'll be happy to recite my resume to you afterwards to let you know that you can do it. You can do it. We'll more on this later, and I'll draw my graph for you, but you don't want to hear from me anymore.
Well, actually, your comment about the pandemic leads right to the very next question I had, was, some people have not felt a struggle with depression or anxiety until the pandemic. Some people already had problems, and then we're sitting at home with hours on end with our own thoughts. So, how did the pandemic, cause issues with your already existing anxiety, depression? What did you observe about, others as well? Whoever wants to, and Kayla, you can throw in from the law student standpoint too.
I'll start real short and then we'll take you on. For me, it's, as you can probably tell, and if you stick afterwards for the coffee and donuts, you will know, I am an extrovert. I want to be around people. And when the government and the science say you should not be with people or you will die, that's a problem for me. And so to be inside and not be with people, and to not have my usual mechanisms of regeneration, of connection, of feeling, that was really a big deal for me. And so it took a lot of introspection, and I got too far over on my concern, worry, afraid graph. Emails would scare me. It's like, I shouldn't scare you. I realized that I need to get some help. So for me, it was to be cut off from the world because of the pandemic.
I know a lot of people or friends, classmates had problems for the same reason. I'm an introvert, so I love the pandemic, staying at home, chilling, I'm good. For a lot of other people though, it does not work that way for, especially if you're an extrovert. And I know a lot of my classmates struggled with making connections, just like you were talking about, and being able to feel like a part of something. And it was not good for a lot of them to be at home alone with their thoughts. So I know my class, the summer starters, a lot of us actually did Zoom study groups so we could see each other. I think we did like a Zoom hangout a couple times.
That's great.
Things like that, so we could still stay connected. But I know for sure it did affect a lot of people, not just my class, but a lot of y'all, I'm sure too.
So what I've seen with a lot of young lawyers, as well as judges for that matter, is adjusting to the new normal has given people anxiety. And one of the interesting things that I see is Zoom anxiety, that you're literally staring at yourself. No, do I really look like that? Do I really sound like that? Like, okay, I gotta fix this, I gotta do this. And you are literally having to stare at yourself, something that you don't ever have to do in a real setting. And you're watching yourself as you present live to a court, or as you even talk to friends. And I've noticed that a lot of lawyers have just gotten so tricked up in hearings because they haven't adjusted to that new normal. And so I just really encourage y'all that what has been really helpful for me is just getting used to the different platforms. So for example, most
Teams is terrible. Microsoft Teams is terrible.
Teams is terrible. WebEx is not that much better. But I will say that the majority of courts, at least in Dallas, have been using Zoom. And, you know, so I remember when the pandemic first happened, full disclosure, I was 8 months pregnant when the shutdown happened. So I had my baby, my first baby, in the middle of this pandemic. And so my anxiety was very different. I was so worried about my newborn child, and I was worried about my 85-plus-year-old grandparents, and how are we going to get them a vaccine? And, you know, yet you're isolated from these people because that's what everyone has told you to do, and that's what's safest. And so I really learned to kind of find comfort in a survival mode where I was like, okay, you know what? I got to deal with today, and then tomorrow we'll deal with tomorrow. And what I would do is I would get on Zoom and I'd practice. And I noticed that a lot of my clients would have similar anxiety. So I would schedule practice times with my clients. I practice family law. And so, you know, I'm working with real people, not sophisticated businessmen at every turn, or businesswomen, or CEOs, or executives. I mean, sometimes you are, but a lot of times you're dealing with somebody who's never gotten on Zoom because they haven't had to. And so what I really tried to do was over prepare every time, because I noticed that my anxiety would always go down if I felt like, okay, I understand the technology, I understand what I'm doing. And so at least for y'all who are coming out of law school, if Zoom is still happening, which I feel like a lot of courts are going to continue it, especially for smaller hearings, maybe not final trials, y'all are already going to have a leg up because you know the technology. From a financial perspective, I know a lot of law students are afraid because of the fact that the job market and the economy, what is it going to look like when you get out? I had similar fears as far as, oh my gosh, like what's business going to look like? Now in family law, that's not been an issue. Like everyone's getting divorced. Kids don't want to live with parent A anymore. They got to go to parent B. And so it's been very crazy, but I think that the number one thing that you guys can do for yourselves to try to ensure a job in this market is get involved. Find something that you really, really care about and build connections from there. For me, Dallas Association of Young Lawyers kind of pulled me in. I knew I wanted to help young lawyers. I also do a lot of animal rescue work, and that has led me to kind of be a stepping stone to the firm that I'm at now. I wasn't top 10%, I wasn't law review, but sometimes the people that you know, the preparation that you do can save you from all the problems later on in a hurry.
And if I could just add, because when you use the word survival mode, every day at Baylor Law School is survival mode. Let's just admit that, okay? Just, yes, this is the first time you guys have responded to me. This is great. I like that. So we want to talk more about this. All right, let's talk about why Baylor Law is hard. And it's a deliberate process to forge you into what you're going to be. A friend of mine once said, if it hurts, it's good for you. And so Baylor Law is survival mode every single day. And so you cannot live that way. You can do it for 3 years. You can do it for 4. You can do it for 5. Not here at Baylor, but you go out in the world. You cannot live in survival mode. And so, pandemic aside, that's the number one thing that I think that for me, I had to learn the lesson of in navigating mental health is that you cannot just live in survival mode. And so I'm telling the group of people here that are going to have to go home and read 10,000 pages to be called on tomorrow. And so you're going to be like, shut up, it's survival mode. When this is over, and it will be over, I promise. It was over for me 8 years ago. You've got to get out of survival mode. And that does mean taking care of your health.
And I'll just interject one little thing. I hadn't planned to say very much since I'm the moderator, but in the spirit of transparency. So, I mean, no matter what your position is, it can things like this can impact you. Last spring, when we got sent home and told we weren't coming back, just so happened that at the very same time, my daughter, who's already been hospitalized once because she was suicidal, needed to be hospitalized again. Literally the Friday that spring break was starting, we were up in Fort Worth trying to get her admitted somewhere. And because she didn't have a plan to kill herself that day, they wouldn't keep her. They sent her home with us and said, keep her safe. And then everything shut down and there was nowhere to go. I went into survival mode as a mom. And for the poor students that had to have me as a teacher last spring, all they got was recorded PowerPoint lectures because that's the only way I could survive. I sat on the couch for hours on end, crying, praying, stressing, making sure that she had no access to knives or medication or shoestrings or the whole list of things they told me to make sure my child couldn't have. That was bizarre. And I was going in a downward spiral and I knew it. I was like, I can't take care of her if I don't take care of me. And so that's one of those things where I had to be selfish a little bit for me so I could give her everything that she needed. And that's when I started running. Found my love of running again, got on the treadmill, started signing up for virtual races, which I absolutely love because I don't like to run with people. When I'm sweating and huffing and puffing, I'm going to do that in the privacy of my own home on my treadmill and watch action movies. But I had to take an hour out of the day for me so I could give some sort of information to my students in the best way possible and take care of my child. So, you know, no matter what point you are in your life, those kinds of things can hit you. And you need to be able to recognize it and say, okay, this isn't good, this isn't healthy. And not only is it going to hurt me, it's going to end up impacting the people around me as well. So take that little bit of selfishness time, because it's not really selfish. It's the way that you can actually be there and do the things that you need to do for others. And my daughter is now graduating from high school, doing great here at Baylor. She's actually our student worker upstairs, the girl with the hair color that changes from week to week. I think it's now burnt green at the bottom. That's my daughter. And, you know, so you can get to the other side. You just got to be able to work through it and get there. So, you know that people are always willing to help you and willing to listen. And you've got to do that for yourself too. I have a little card that I printed out for during the pandemic. And it said, you're doing a lot really well during a pandemic, be kind to yourself. And I have that on my computer at home. And I looked at that every morning before I started teaching live Zoom classes. It's like, we have to give ourselves a little bit of grace during a really weird time where everything is new and different and not how it used to be. So the kindness and the compassion needs to extend to yourself as well as the people around you. Okay, so that kind of gets to a little bit about how can your anxiety and depression impact your relationships with not just your family, but clients, you know, from a law student perspective, other classmates, professors, and how do you kind of keep that under control?
Let's go with Taylor.
Yeah.
You get to be first.
Okay, for me, relationship-wise, in full disclosure, it's very hard for me to open up to people. My class probably knows that. Like when summer comes, like I'm off the grid and just like non-existent. People don't hear from me. I go into my own little bubble. I have a little girl that I help take care of. Y'all, if y'all know me, my boyfriend has a little girl. We've been together for 5 years. So I have to make sure I'm at my tip top so I can be at her tip top. She's 8 going on 9. And so relationships are hard. Friendship wise or, you know, family wise, boyfriend, girlfriend, all of those things. But I think being open and being honest and letting people know, I've never hidden, I have generalized anxiety. Y'all know me. Oh, I popped an extra pill today because I was going to be on here live. So, you know.
So I texted Whitney about that this morning. I was like, why do I feel like taking an extra Xanax this morning because I'm going to Baylor?
So there you go.
And then I texted Andy at like Clark and I said, seeing all these PC boxes are giving me PTSD. So, you know, it's real.
Yes. So I always joke, and if y'all know me, like, oh, I popped an extra chill pill today. It's not a joke. I really probably did. You do what you have to do to get by and to get out of survival mode. Do I take them all the time? I have medication that I take every single day to control my generalized anxiety. That's what I need. I've tried doing other things. I've tried doing other ways. Nothing's worked for me except daily medication. When I take final exams or if I'm doing live speaking, anything like that, I have an extra medication for, I go into full panic attack mode. So I take extra medication for panic disorder in that sense. But I think it's very important to talk to people. You'd be surprised. When I was in medical school, I was our class chaplain, and somebody asked me how do you manage stress? And I was like, oh, I take Prozac. I was joking, but I had a lot of people come up and tell me afterwards, what do you take that for? And I said, oh, I have generalized anxiety. Talk to them about it, and kind of find out, so did half the class. But people don't want to talk about it because it has that horrible stigma to it that something's wrong with you. And the truth is, nothing's wrong with you. It's no different than taking blood pressure medicine. You have to take blood pressure medicine every day to control your blood pressure. You have to take cholesterol medicine every day to control your cholesterol. You have to do certain things to prevent other things from happening. Taking medication for mental health reasons is no different than that.
If I could take a moment and speak to the dudes for a second. She brought up stigma, and mental health has been especially stigmatized for men, as well as especially in the lawyer culture, which has traditionally been very male dominated. Talking about your feelings, talking about how you feel, what you're feeling is not weakness. It is not going to jeopardize your ability to be successful. It is not going to jeopardize your ability to dominate in the courtroom. You need to be able to communicate about what you need, how you're feeling, and that is not a sign of weakness. So, and so to the question about relationships, is important even for it's everyone, but generally the stereotype is that men don't cry and men don't have feelings. And I mean, I'm an elder millennial, so maybe things have changed, but you need to have a relationship with someone. If it's your mother, it's your wife, it's your husband, I don't care who it is, but you need to have a relationship with someone that you can communicate your feelings, your needs, and what you need. Because in order to be the hero, the advocate, the leader, the man you want to be, you need to take care of yourself. So relationships are very important. And talking about your feelings is too. I'll talk about my feelings more afterwards over the donuts.
You're gonna eat your feelings.
I'm going to eat my.
So I agree and echo everything that Kayla and Amy have said. Thankfully for me, because I didn't have a lot of family support, I was able to speak pretty openly with my friends and be able to kind of have that camaraderie and that support without feeling like, oh my gosh, somebody's gonna think I'm weak. Somebody's gonna think that they can take my spot on the mock trial team and somebody's gonna use this against me. And so, I know that Baylor, because it is such a wonderful school, that there's a lot of competition here, but just remember that you're really competing with yourself and it doesn't have to be your friends. Like you said, we have to extend grace and kindness to ourselves because that's the relationship that's going to pull us through at the end. But I know that whenever I'm experiencing a depressive episode, I become very withdrawn. I want to have as little communication with people as possible. I become very, kind of a stereotypical that I just want to like be under a blanket and not talk to anybody. But ironically, when I start talking to people and when I'm able to open up to one person, I notice that I'm feeling a little bit better. And just like Andy said, you're not going to be perceived as weak. I am routinely in front of judges at least twice a week, if not more. Probably take cases to trial at least once a month. And plenty of the judges, because I have relationships with them through the bar associations that I'm involved with, know that I struggle with anxiety, know that I struggle with depression. And guess what? I can guarantee you that if I were to call a judge up and say, I cannot make it to this temporary restraining order hearing, I'm just having a really, really bad day, please help me. Not a single one of them is going to say, you're weak, what's wrong with you? Get up here. Not a single one. They're going to say, thank you for being honest. Thank you for being transparent. And guess what? If that opposing counsel didn't already extend that grace, I'm sure the judge is going to have a talking to them as well. And so while the practice of law is being an advocate and is fiercely competitive by nature, extend grace to each other as well as yourself, because you never know what the person on the other side is going through.
Hey, I'm sorry, you're gonna hear too much from me. But the caveat on that one though is that that there are some people who do not have such a light view of mental health. And you all should be prepared for that as well. And so when you're talking about your experience with mental health or your needs or your desires, you do need to make sure that you are evaluating who you're communicating that to. You know, you don't want to go up to opposing counsel and be like, I had a really hard day yesterday. Can we really just not do this today? They're gonna say, no, I'm gonna squish you. But you can talk to your boss about it. You can talk to your family about it. You know, you've got to really figure that out. And so ultimately, I think it's important to just be evaluative about how you communicate this to you. We should be destigmatizing it within our relationships, within our profession, within our community. But there are some less enlightened people out there. My family's code word for it is you're having a migraine. If you're having a migraine today, that may be your personal health day, but you know, other people catch you right if you're having a headache. So.
Sad but true.
Yeah.
So that leads to kind of one of my next questions. I mean, as law students, as lawyers, we have professional deadlines, we have those have-tos, you know, what's kind of your practical advice, strategies for, you know, what if it is one of those days where you can't get out of bed or you're having a full-on anxiety attack and can't function? I mean, how do you manage those professional obligations in the world that we live in?
Ask for help. You know, I think especially in your first year of practice in the real world, if you will, that it's imperative to build relationships, not just with your boss, but with your associates, with your paralegal, with your secretary. And those are the people that you can turn to for help. I'm really fortunate that I have an associate and a paralegal that exclusively work with me. And so I know that I can count on them because I've built relationships with them over the years. And my associate knows that if something happens to her, I'm there to catch her and vice versa. And at the end of the day, building that community and asking for help is critical. I know too, at the same time, that even though Andy and I weren't super close in law school, we've become really close since we've been in the Dallas community. If I had some crazy temporary restraining order hearing in family law that poor Andy knows nothing about, I know I could get on the phone with him and say, listen, I cannot today, it's just not working. Can you please cover this hearing for me? And he may have no idea what he's doing, but I know that I could count on him to do it. And vice versa. If I walked into a plaintiff, I'd be like, damages? I don't judge, but summary judgment? Okay. And so it's, you know, I feel like I am oftentimes my most confident when I'm a champion for someone else. And that's probably what drove most of y'all to the practice of law, is that you are probably natural empaths, you care about helping other people, and that's really what we do. And so channeling that energy and asking for help yourself, I think you'll find that your colleagues are going to be your biggest resource.
And if you don't have the summary judgment hearing that day, or you don't have the deposition, or you don't have the big thing, the thing I have found most powerful is if you're having that day where you can feel your heart pounding at the moment you walk in and you're having problems, do something. Just do something. I have friends from law school who would sit there for 3 hours on Facebook the night before an exam and then finally decide to crack the book, you know? And then, you know, it wouldn't go well. For me, I remedies. Professor Hernandez is in here, right? The night before remedies, I did not know anything. I was like, I am going to fail this class. But you don't sit on Facebook worrying about it. You just do something. So I opened the book and I was like, this is a word I don't know. I'm going to learn this word. And the same works in law. If you're panicked, if you're worried, yes, you got to ask for help if there's a deadline. But if you're just having a really bad day today and nothing's really due, just do something. Because who's here had Professor Gordon? Yeah, that's right. You know, Professor Gordon says you must
come to me with the answer before you ask your question.
You know, he wants you to see that you look in the green book, try and find the answer. If your boss walks in and says, what are you working on today? And it's not the thing you want you to be working on, but you're working on something, that's what you need to be doing. Because you're going to say, yeah, I'm a little slow today. I was researching this issue, or I was preparing for this. Oh, okay. Well, I would have done it differently, but that's okay. Cool. All right, see you. You know, or they give you the answer. Like Professor Gordon, here, I looked at 3 different ways and I told you the answer. All right, here's the answer. Just do something. And I'm gonna put the coda on that by saying you may get to a point in your mental health journey where, we talked about loss of interest in things you like. You may get to the point where you get loss of interest in brushing your teeth, or putting on shoes, or leaving your house. The way to get through that is to just do something. Just do something.
Let me add to that really quick.
Oh, yeah.
As far as doing something, I'm a very black and white person. So I remember the first year of law school was really, really hard for me because I couldn't understand this whole, there's not one right answer. It's about the analysis. And I just remember thinking, no, I need a step-by-step guide. I need to know that there's a right answer. And I would spin and spin and spin in my head. And to this day, I'm still very structured and I need to know what step 1, step 2, step 3. Okay, if there's a step 4, okay, I'll draw an arrow, like if this, then this. But for me, one of the most helpful things when I'm going through this, like Andy said, and I need to just do something and stop engaging in analysis paralysis, is make a list. Make a list. I don't care if it's a grocery list. I don't care. I literally have over here in my work bag, I literally have a to-do list of my cases. And I will cross things off, and just doing one cross off, email opposing counsel, that will make you feel like you've taken one step forward, which will lead to another step and another step.
Okay, and on that making lists, this is something that actually came from a Baylor faculty member, I guess in the psychology department, I can't remember who it was, but it was a really helpful article that Baylor had sent out in one of the university-wide publications a couple of years ago, and it changed my life because I'm a real uptight, wound up kind of person, and surprise. And I was having trouble sleeping at night, because all the things that I knew I needed to do like the next day and the next week and next month, I couldn't shut it off. And this Baylor professor had done this research study and found that if you write down your to-do list right before you go to bed, you'll sleep better because you've written it down and it's concrete, it's there, you have a plan, and then your brain can stop fretting over it. So I now have a notepad and pen on my nightstand table. And one of the last things I do is I sit down and I look at my calendar on my phone and I make my to-do list for the next day, the have-tos, and I sleep so much better. I don't wake up in the middle of the night going, oh, I need to remember this. And it was really quite magical. So if you have issues like that, something so simple, but you really might find it super helpful. And it's some research study that's been published. You could probably do some searching on the Baylor website and find it, but it was really fascinating and practical information. Okay, so we're still doing okay on time. All right, so in everything that you have to do, when you're a law student, when you're out in practice, you've got personal obligations, you've got professional obligations, all those things. What advice do you have on setting boundaries so you can better manage mental health? Who wants to tackle that first?
Andy, you try.
So the thing I tell young lawyers is when you're in law, as in theater, the answer is always yes and, it's never no. Because when you walk into the partner's office and they say, hey, you want to help me on this? You say, yes, and I'd love to hear what else you're working on. Oh, well, I'm also working on this, and you should help me with this. And suddenly you're getting business and billable hours. Isn't that great? I've never actually lived that experience. I've only ever worked on contingency fee. So we can talk about that more later. But so young lawyers, your motto needs to be yes and, but you, on the other side of that, you kind of need to create the circle around who am I as a person and what do I want to be doing as a human being. That's really hard if you don't really know what you want to be doing as a human being. But for example, I was married when I left law school, so I knew I need to go home tonight. So yes, and okay, I will work until 7:30, but I need to go home tonight. Okay, that's set your boundary for year one. And as I've gotten further into the experience, now my boundary is my daughter can't go to daycare because she threw a fit so bad she got a fever because COVID's out there. She's got a fever. Well, that's my boundary now. I got to call and I got to reschedule things, and I got to take care of that. Your life will dictate your boundaries. Your boundaries should dictate your life. No art, no science. You got to figure it out.
So I have a little bit different of a perspective. I think it's more, for me at least, and as a partner, kind of managing, 40 to 50 cases at once, and then also managing an associate and paralegal and staff is yes, but. And so I would rather my paralegal and I would rather my associate come to me and say, yes, Whitney, I'm happy to help with this, but I have all these other things that you wanted. How do you want me to prioritize it? And you start to build those boundaries because people treat you the way that you teach them to treat you. And I had to kind of learn that the hard way. When I first came out of law school, I worked at 2 kind of brutal firms that have a reputation for really like grinding people to a pulp and just working the crap out of them.
They're
And
opposing counsel, I know, they're terrible.
yeah, they are. And
They're not video,
not the
they're
firm I
good.
know now.
They're
The
good.
firm I know now is fantastic, fantastic.
This is not gonna age well when she runs for judge, I'm gonna trot this out.
But they have a reputation for really having to work super hard. And I knew that I could never have a family at those firms. And I knew my husband's an attorney too. And so the great thing about that was that he kind of understood that dynamic that, okay, maybe we both have to work late. And that's why we chose not to have kids till we were well into our 30s. And at the end of the day, I didn't have a lot of boundaries at those places because I always said, yes, 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 yes. There was no but, there was no and. And honestly, I don't really know how well it would have been received if there was a but or an and. However, I now, like Andy said, have a life that I knew that once I was in a place that I had my own clients, that I was able to kind of dictate what the workload looked like, but I wanted to mirror that for the people that worked for me. I never wanted somebody to work for me and it be just a stepping stone to the next career. I wanted the people that came and worked for me to know that I was going to mentor them, build them up so they could be a partner, and that I wanted them to be even more successful than me. And so I think that changing the culture is really, really important and that we help flow that downward. Not saying that you shouldn't work hard, especially now as a mom. There are days where, yeah, my child can't go to school or can't even go to the nanny because she's sick and I don't want to get anybody else sick. But guess what? When she goes to bed at 7:30, maybe that means I'm working till 1 in the morning. And that's okay, as long as I'm able to draw that boundary. And so I just really encourage y'all to think about what it is that you want in life at that moment before you accept that job, and then kind of create your boundaries around that. Because for me, I was okay when I didn't have children working from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Now, again, not sustainable, but it was something that I was okay doing until I could get to the next stepping point in my career.
I agree with both. And then having an internship over the summer, the yes and worked beautifully.
You're welcome.
It worked beautifully, except when we had the little one, and then it turned into yes, but. So I think it's important that your boundaries dictate your life, especially in law school. Also, when you're trying to build up your resume and you want to be a part of every organization under God's green earth and the sun, to make your resume look good. That was a problem that I ran into. I was too busy. We have tons of reading, and then you have organizations on top of that, and then you have other things, friends, family on top of that, to draw boundaries. I think it's important to kind of pick your priorities while you're in law school, get super involved in those 1 or 2, 3 things, and set your boundaries according to that. Also, there's nothing wrong with telling people no. If you have too much on your plate and it's going to stress you out or keep you up late, or where you're missing meals and you're missing sleep because you're grinding till who knows when, it really is okay to say, no, I can't right now, maybe later. I think there's a big stigma that you always have to say yes and take more on your plate because we are all overachievers and we know we can do it. Now, can it be done well when you have 80 irons in the fire? Not so much. But I don't think in law school, at least, that there's anything wrong with saying, no, I just can't. I have too much going on right now. When you do get in practice, like they both said, it's going to turn into yes and yes, but.
I'm gonna write that down, yes, but, I like that. This will be on the final.
In somebody's class. And one thing I will say to y'all here as a group that I've said to many law students that have come to my office, like asking for advice and trying to figure out what to do going forward. I always tell them the best advice I can give is don't let anyone else define what success is for you. We are all individual people. There's different things that will make each one of us feel happy and fulfilled and satisfied. And so don't let somebody else's vision and dream of what the epitome of being a lawyer is dictate the decisions you make and how you go about conducting yourself, because you're paying too much money and working too hard to then make yourself miserable for somebody else. So that's where you ask, good questions, of prospective employers. You look around, you observe things, and sometimes you take the first job because you got to take the first job, and that's not going to be your forever job. Sometimes we do the things we have to do to get started, but we know that's not going to be the end of the equation, because what some people think is success is not going to make you happy, and it's not going to make you feel satisfied. I always said, I was just telling them before we started, I was the first associate at my firm to have a child as an associate. Now, again, granted, this is, 18 years ago, so things are much different now. But I was like, I'm already in my 30s, and if this is going to happen, it's going to happen now, and I can't, worry about if I've made partner or not yet. That was a choice I made, with no expectations for anybody to treat me any differently or give me special favors. It's just like, this is the choice I'm going to make, and the chips will fall where they may. But you have to feel empowered to make those kinds of judgment calls for yourself, because if you don't, you will be miserable, and then the anxiety will get worse, your depression will get worse, and you'll get to a point where you can't get out of the hole. So we each have our own goals and ambitions, and that's great. That's what makes us unique and interesting people, because we all have a different path. So take your own path. Don't let somebody give you the map and say, follow this. It's not going to work. Okay, so we still have a few minutes left, so I wanted to kind of leave them with some tips, advice, for dealing with depression and anxiety. Maybe this is a good time for your graph.
I was gonna say,
The moment Professor Gisler says, don't listen to somebody else, and don't let them look, don't give them your map, and don't follow their map. I am literally going to pull a map out of my pocket. I'm gonna literally
It's a
pull
different kind of map.
It's a different kind of map. So,
Do you want me to angle the camera for
what
you, Andy?
I'm going
So
to do is I'm gonna hold it up to the camera, and then I'll explain it. So
They're not, can you see it?
all right, so I call this
Oh my
the
gosh.
get help graph. On the bottom, on the x-axis of, not math, so if that's Y, somebody's gonna correct me.
You should have let me draw this out. You
Yeah,
write
this
like
is
a
terrible, but
doctor.
anyway, so on the bottom is the concerned, worried, afraid. So on the x-axis is concerned, worried, afraid. And on the y-axis is on the very bottom, it should say imminent physical harm. And on the top, it says no realistic consequence. And so you should figure out your anxiety, your depression, where you are on your mental health continuum by referring to the concerned, worried, afraid graph. If you have something over here that says that you are afraid of something with no realistic consequence, get help. If you are not afraid of something that has imminent physical harm, get help. So this helps me figure out that when I get the email from opposing counsel, it makes my heart start beating. That is something that it lacks somewhere between physical harm, imminent physical harm, and no realistic consequence, but it's way over here on worry. That's when I need to check in with myself, when I need to get help, when I need to talk to somebody. My children are in imminent physical harm. You gotta act, you gotta do, you gotta go, you gotta be worried, you gotta be afraid, because you gotta act. So I highly recommend looking at your life, looking at what you're doing, and understanding how you kind of fit on that graph. Figure out figure out how you work with concern, worried, afraid, and where your boundaries are on things, and put that together to know yourself. And when you get one end or the other, it's time to get help.
So as far as tips and tricks for me, well, first of all, when I was in law school, one of the things that would help me, and I don't know how well it serves me in the real world, but again, you're in survival mode, especially when you're in finals crunch time. I used to always say to myself, what's the worst that can happen? And then I would think about that. Okay, well, I could get a memo. Okay, well, maybe I make a C on the test. okay, I can live with all those consequences. Okay, maybe I'm gonna fail a class. Like, yes, that's terrifying. Nobody wants to fail a class. Do the best that you can. But when I was able to put that into context, then it would allow me to make that list, to open the book, to look at an outline, to outline myself. And that really is what got me from point A to point B, was just realizing, okay, I'm not going to be in physical imminent harm. Yeah, I could have something bad happen, like fail a class, but guess what? I can retake that class. It's going to be okay. And so that served me really well in law school. Another thing that served me really well was, like Kayla was saying, try not to spread yourself too thin by getting involved in 16,000 organizations. Find a couple things that you're really passionate about. For me, it was animal rescue. So I got involved with Austin Boxer Rescue. I got involved with the Waco Humane Society, and I would foster animals. And I told Andy that anytime, to this day, when I foster, it allows me to see a tangible difference that I can make in the world. And taking an abused, neglected, injured animal and then rehabilitating it is really empowering, and selfishly, it makes you feel good because you realize, okay, this is what I'm doing, and it reminds you that your life has purpose. And then it helps you get back to those things that maybe you just don't want to do as much. And so I know it's a little touchy-feely, but find something that you really care about and invest yourself in that, and I promise it'll pay off. In law school, I did CASA, the best experience of my life. One of the things that led me to being a family lawyer. And those things, helping children, other people, other law students, like this wellness committee is fantastic. And you'll find your purpose, and then you'll realize that everything that you're going through now has meaning.
And then for the days where you can't even do that, tips and tricks, because there are days where you can't, where you just can't. I see people nodding, believe me, I know. Take joy in the small things. The small things are big things. And for the days where you feel like you can't do anything or getting out of bed is even a task. I remember when I was in med school, so my anxiety was terrible in med school. Horrible, like you have horrible. Even on medication, it was horrible. That's part of the reason why I left, because it was not good for my mental health. I used to, y'all are gonna laugh, but when y'all have kids, it won't be fun anymore. I had myself a chore chart, and on bad days, I gave myself stickers because stickers made me happy. And oh, today I went for a walk, and you're like, what the heck? You went for a walk? Yeah, I went for a walk because I felt like laying in bed for a whole 24-hour period. But I got up, I got dressed, I went for a walk. That's 3 stickers. You accomplished something. And then when you see, oh, I really didn't feel like doing anything, but I did something, okay, maybe I can open a book. And then you can try opening a book. And if it doesn't go well, then close the book. What's just the same thing? What's the worst thing that could happen? You miss a day of studying, you will live. Life will go on.
You will.
You're not going to melt. You're not going to die. The world is not going to collapse. I promise you. There's plenty of days, even in law school, where I'm just overwhelmed sometimes. And my answer to that is, we're going to try to study. Don't set these crazy expectations. I'm going to outline all of constitutional law in a day. No, you're not. It's not. So don't try. But yeah, try to open those on those days that you can't do anything. Try to do, just like he was saying, try to do something and take joy in the little things. The other thing I was going to say, if you're ever having a bad day, that's what I call my days, or bad days. When I have a bad day, I'm very big on random acts of kindness. I do something nice for someone else for no reason. I like to keep extra stashes of candy bars in my house, and I bring them to school and give them to people. And some of these folks out here have been recipients of my candy bar love. I like to do those things, and knowing that, yeah, my day might be crappy, but I made somebody else smile makes me feel a little bit better. So I think too, the way my anxiety works is, sometimes when I go to a big coping mechanism now, I think it's because I'm older though, is what's the worst that can happen? But if you're in the middle of an anxiety attack, what's the worst that can happen can snowball into some pretty bad things. So that you can't get out of, and then you do feel like you're in imminent danger. And it's really something very small once you're able to get yourself together. But I think a big part of that too is taking the focus off yourself. One, no, you're not the only one who feels like you're drowning or you're overwhelmed or that law school's hard and you're gonna fail out. I think I talked last week to about 6 different 1Qs that came up and told me they were all gonna drop out because this is hard. And does it get better? No, you just get better. Law school doesn't get better. Law school is hard, but you get better and you're able to do more because you're great. If you couldn't do it, you wouldn't be here. So I think taking the focus off of yourself and your worries and what's going on in your little world sometimes and helping to bring smiles or bring joy to other people can actually really be a tip to kind of get you out of those moods too.
Okay, so I'm gonna wrap us up here. You know, one thing that, one tip they gave us when we brought our daughter home from her week-long hospitalization was to try each day to get her to identify just one good thing. So sometimes, even if you feel like you had a god-awful day, you can find one good thing. And we had a glass jar and a little colored paper. And every day, she and I would sit down and write down our one good thing for the day, fold it up and put it in the jar. And when you get to a day where you just think there's not one good thing, you dump out the jar and you start reading through. And you know what? By the end of 365 days, you realize even if there was a lot of crap, there was a lot of good as well. And that can really help kind of lift you up when you're feeling like there's nothing good. So hopefully, if anything, this gave you a feeling that you're not alone. You shouldn't be afraid to talk to anybody here or reach out for anything that you need. We have coffee and donuts. This room is available until 2:45. And Andy and Whitney are going to stay here and hang out. So y'all are free to come up and visit with them, informal conversation. And then also just reminding you, we have lots of activities for the rest of this week. Tomorrow, meditation in the Lawyers Lounge running from 8:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. You can go in and have some quiet time and meditate if you need some spirit, mind health. Wednesday, we're going to have kickboxing out on the patio at 5:30 and yoga on the back lawn at 6. Thursday, chair massages from 3:30 to 7 in the Lawyers Lounge and a dog park on the back lawn from 4 to 6. And Friday, we're going to focus on physical health with nutritious snacks and connecting with Baylor Fitwell and Baylor Nutrition to make that connection as well. So we hope you get a lot out of the programming this week. And thanks again so much for joining us. And thank you to our wonderful panelists for joining us today.